always felt like fate had been kind to me. My life seemed like something out of a dream. A caring partner, two incredible daughters, and a warm, inviting home in a quiet neighborhood. Our days passed in a calm rhythm, with occasional bursts of excitement from vacations or family celebrations. I took care of our home, raised the children, and it looked like I had everything I needed to be content. But deep within me was a secret that I had carefully kept from everyone around me. Every morning, I woke to the soft sounds of the world outside, whether it was the rustling of leaves or the first light of dawn filling the room. I brewed a cup of strong tea, ready to face the day ahead. My husband would leave for his job, and the girls prepared for school. I cooked breakfast, helped with school projects, and drove them to their activities. In the evenings, we gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories of our day or watching something together. It felt like this serene routine could go on forever. Yet even in those moments of contentment, I found myself slipping back into memories of who I once was. Someone more spontaneous, more daring. Memories of a past I had tried to lock away, but that still flickered in the quiet corners of my mind, refusing to be forgotten. There were times when I'd catch myself gazing at our family photo on the mantel. In it, we're all beaming, a picture-perfect moment frozen in time. But no matter how happy we appeared, something always felt off, like a subtle void lingering beneath the surface. It was as though a part of me, hidden deep inside, was missing from the image. A secret from my past that I'd spent years hiding. Back when I was young, full of energy and excitement, I lived in the heart of a sprawling metropolis. I had grand plans for my future and was full of ambition, attending university with dreams that stretched far beyond the city's limits. And then I met him, a charming and mysterious man who turned my world upside down. Our relationship was intense and unpredictable, filled with both incredible highs and devastating lows. It wasn't built to last. After a string of heated arguments and dramatic reunions, we finally went our separate ways. I was shattered at the time, but gradually the pain dulled, and I found a way to move forward. Eventually, I settled in this quiet town, far from the life I once knew. That's where I met Matthew. He was nothing like the man I'd been involved with before. Stable, gentle, and dependable. He brought me peace when I needed it most. We built a home together, and soon enough, I was raising two wonderful sons. It seemed like everything had fallen into place, and my life finally had direction. Yet, every now and then, memories from my past would creep back in, like an unwelcome chill in the air. I was terrified that if Matthew ever uncovered the truth about my past, it would shatter the life we had created. He wouldn't be able to forgive me for the secrets I'd kept. And so, I guarded my past fiercely, keeping it locked away in the deepest corners of my mind. But with each passing year, the weight of that hidden truth became harder to bear, as if the secret itself was growing too large to contain any longer. As time passed, my daughters were growing fast, and Matthew's career was flourishing. Our life had settled into a peaceful rhythm, with the days blending into one another. But one afternoon, while walking through a quiet, forgotten corner of town, something unexpected happened. I saw him, the man who had once turned my world upside down. He had aged, his appearance subtly altered, but there was no mistaking him. The same intensity lingered in his eyes, the spark that once ignited something wild and uncontrollable inside me. We started talking, and I soon discovered that he too had made a life in this city. He spoke of his triumphs and setbacks, weaving the story of his years. I stood there, listening in a trance, every word pulling me back to a time I had worked so hard to forget. The emotions I thought were long buried surged to the surface. I knew immediately that this was dangerous territory. I couldn't afford to be drawn into the chaos I had once known. I had a loving husband, two children who depended on me, a life I cherished. And yet, standing there, I felt an undeniable pull towards him. It was as though a part of me I had suppressed for so long was waking up, and I couldn't quite understand why or how it had resurfaced so easily. Logic told me to walk away, to forget we had ever crossed paths again. But something deep inside held me in place, unable to sever the invisible thread that still connected us. After that unexpected encounter, the carefully constructed world I had spent years building began to unravel. Memories of the past surged with such intensity that I struggled to stay grounded in the present. It was as if I was being torn in two directions. One path leading to my family, my home, and my loving husband. The other pulling me irresistibly toward a past I had tried so hard to leave behind. I kept telling myself that it was nothing more than a fleeting emotion, something that would fade with time. But with each passing day, it only grew stronger. I found myself unconsciously searching for him, recalling the intensity of the days we once shared, losing myself in thoughts I had no business entertaining. Night after night, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with endless questions. What should I do? How could I make the right choice? I knew deep down that if I gave in to these feelings, I would shatter everything I held dear. Yet, the weight of those emotions seemed unbearable, impossible to push away, no matter how hard I tried. It was like a storm brewing inside me, threatening to consume everything in its path. I felt trapped, as though the walls were closing in around me. On one side, there was the pull of the past, risky, forbidden, and filled with dangerous allure. On the other, the love I had for my family, my sense of responsibility to them, kept me grounded. I was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions, spiraling deeper into despair. The days became a relentless cycle of inner torment. I buried myself in chores, throwing myself into conversations with my daughters, trying desperately to keep my mind occupied. But none of it helped. Thoughts of him haunted me, refusing to leave me in peace. It felt like I was losing control, spiraling into a madness I couldn't escape. One evening, when Matthew was working late, the pressure became too much. I gave in. I picked up the phone and called him. We spoke for what felt like hours. He shared pieces of his life, his dreams for the future, and as I listened, my heart ached in ways I couldn't explain. I knew deep down that I was crossing a line, one I couldn't afford to cross, but I couldn't stop myself. His voice wrapped around me like a familiar comfort, and even though I knew it was wrong, I let it happen. Before long, our meetings became a regular occurrence. We wandered through the park, sat in quiet corners of cafes, and talked about anything and everything. I felt more alive than I had in years, as though a forgotten part of me had been reignited. One afternoon, after several casual meetings, the sky opened up and rain poured down unexpectedly. We rushed to his apartment to wait it out, intending only to continue our conversation. Inside, we sat in his living room, the sound of rain pounding against the windows. The air was heavy with unsaid things. Suddenly, my phone rang from where I had left it in my bag by the entrance. For a brief moment, panic seized me. What if it was Matthew? What if he had somehow discovered I was here? The guilt tightened in my chest as I hesitated. Gathering myself, I walked over to check the phone. Relief washed over me when I saw it was just a friend, asking for details about our upcoming vacation plans. After a brief conversation, I returned to the living room. But everything had changed. He was standing there, undressed, the tension between us snapping in an instant. What happened next felt both inevitable and impossible to resist. That day turned into one of the most intense, passionate experiences of my life, filling every corner of his apartment with a fire I hadn't felt in years. I had told myself that this was just a conversation, that nothing would happen. But here I was, unable to stop what had been set in motion. These meetings quickly became a habit, an addiction even. I couldn't pull myself away. Each encounter left me craving the next, and I was trapped in the thrill of it. But as the days passed, so did the weight of my guilt. The thought of Matthew and our daughters haunted me, a constant reminder of the betrayal I was committing. Every moment with him made me question who I had become and what I was sacrificing for this forbidden escape. One evening, after yet another secret meeting with him, I returned home to find Michael sitting alone in the living room. His expression was weary, shadows under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. A knot formed in my stomach. I could sense he suspected something. Yet, I clung to my deception, telling him I'd been out with a friend. But the doubt in his eyes was unmistakable. I realized I couldn't continue like this. Something had to change, but I was torn about what to do. That night was particularly restless. I tossed and turned, haunted by guilt and thoughts of Michael. Sleep eluded me as I wrestled with my conscience. Suddenly, I heard the front door creak open earlier than usual. Panic surged through me. I feigned sleep, hoping to avoid confrontation, but his footsteps drew closer to the bedroom. My heart pounded as the door gently swung open, a sliver of light slicing through the darkness. I felt the mattress dip as Michael sat beside me. "I found out," he said softly. My breath caught. I opened my eyes to meet his gaze, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a distant coldness. "How long has this been happening?" he asked, his eyes never leaving mine. Words failed me. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I felt utterly exposed and vulnerable. "Let me explain," I finally managed to whisper. He stood up slowly, his face unreadable. "There's nothing left to say," he replied quietly. "I think it's best if you go." He turned and walked away, leaving the room cloaked in silence. The sound of the door closing echoed like a final verdict. Alone in the darkness, I understood that everything had fallen apart. Left to myself, I felt a hollow emptiness tearing at me from the inside. Everything I had spent years building, my marriage, my family, my sense of self, collapsed in a single, irreversible moment. Though my children remained with me, I could see how much they were hurting from the separation. The divorce left scars on us all. I was consumed by shame, not just for what I had done to Michael, but for how I had let everyone down, including myself. I had made a terrible mistake, and now I was forced to live with the consequences of the path I had chosen. The days blurred into one another, an endless monotony. I threw myself into chores, tried to rebuild my relationship with the kids, but joy seemed like a distant memory. Everywhere I turned, my past haunted me. I saw traces of him in every detail. His laugh, his touch, the way he made me feel so alive, and yet so lost. But over time, I began to understand that clinging to the past was a prison of my own making. I had to move forward somehow, if only for my children's sake. I spent more time with them, threw myself into new activities, anything to distract myself. Yet, somewhere deep down, a tiny spark of hope remained. That maybe, just maybe, Michael would find it in his heart to forgive me someday. I knew it was foolish, but I couldn't let go of that hope entirely. The years passed. My children grew, and to my surprise, they found it within themselves to forgive me. They saw the weight I carried, my guilt, and gradually they accepted our new reality. Their forgiveness gave me the strength I needed to keep going. I realized I had to completely reinvent my life. I started volunteering, giving my time to people facing their own struggles. This work brought me a sense of purpose and helped ease the lingering pain of my own past. Slowly, I began to feel a flicker of happiness returning. Eventually, I met someone new. He was kind, patient, and gentle. A different sort of man from the ones I had loved before. He didn't know the full extent of my history, and I didn't feel the need to share it right away. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to just live in the moment, hoping our relationship would follow a different, healthier path. Still, the shadow of my past occasionally crept back into my thoughts. Late at night, memories of my life with Michael would resurface. Our family, the good moments that I had destroyed with my choices. But I had learned how to manage those emotions. I understood now that the past could not be undone, but it could teach you invaluable lessons. One day, while out running errands, I crossed paths with Michael by pure coincidence. To my surprise, there was no anger in his eyes, no resentment, just a quiet sense of acceptance, a peaceful indifference. In that moment, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I finally realized that I had been holding on to something he had already let go of long ago. I felt free for the first time. Free from the guilt, the pain, and the regret. I understood that life keeps moving forward, and every person has the chance to begin anew. What truly mattered was the courage to take that first step and to believe in the possibility of something better.